Welcome to the Self Instruct podcast, where we explore techniques, tools, and insights into guiding ourselves towards a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life. We are your hosts, Iggy Sweeney
and Aaron Cropper. From exploring spirituality, finding life's deeper meaning, managing stress and anxiety, battling depression, overcoming addiction, and more, join us as we share practical advice, inspiring stories, and expert guidance to self-instruct ourselves in every facet of our lives.
Ready to find our path to balance?
Let's dive in.
Oh shit.
Oh shit.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Episode number 2. Welcome to our second episode of the Self Instruct podcast. We are on location on this beautiful morning, and our very first guest is a good friend of mine. I consider her one of the most conscious and spiritually aware humans I know. She's a healer, an energy worker, and a Reiki practitioner. We are here at the Breathing Room, which is the space where she practices and leads small meditation groups on Saturday mornings. And she's just such a wonderful human. Please welcome Keeley Harrold. Hi, Keeley.
How's it going, Keeley?
What an introduction.
I told you I had to prepare for this part. And again, I apologize to our listeners if it sounded very scripted, but it was. And I felt that it was due. It was something that was necessary.
Thank you.
Of course. We're so excited to have you. This is, like I said, our second episode. We absolutely have no experience in interviewing people.
Kind of faking it till we make it.
Exactly.
Practice, though, right?
But we're just excited to be doing it, and especially doing it on location and just being here with you in this space. Just to give a little bit of a background history. This is how we met. You do, like I mentioned, guided meditations here for small groups. And I just remember being part of the Enzo Meditation Society Instagram page and seeing your posts about your meditation groups. And I talked Bonnie into coming. Not that I've really had to talk to her. She's willing to do just about anything with me. But it was so much fun. It was so great. And just the energy and the vibe here has always been such a positive one. And I don't know. It's been great to have gotten to know you since then. I've told Aaron a gazillion stories about you also. We talk about you often just because we're very much into what we like to call the woo-woo. Well, I think we're going to get into some questions because we're curious. We want to dive right in with you. So our first question that we have for you is, what inspired you to start your journey into spirituality and energy work? Give us some background to Keeley and her work.
Well, how that started, most what we call spiritual awakenings occur through times, I won't say most, but a vast amount occur through times of tragedy or grief. And so for me, it was when my daughter's father passed, and at the same time, 2 of my grandmothers passed as well, who were,
All around the same time?
Yeah, within months of each other.
Oh, wow.
So it was boom, 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 and it was a lot. And I was having a hard time processing all of it through my system. I couldn't sleep. I was having panic attacks. And my curiosity was piqued because we were talking about this earlier, just a lot of synchronicities that kept coming through after my daughter's father passed. And it created curiosity in me. Like you said, I love that word. Curiosity gets us everywhere that we need to go. And I was curious. I was curious about what it meant because something just, it wouldn't let me rest. And I had to dig into it. And I went down a rabbit hole, and I'm still going down rabbit holes, but ultimately...
you got me going down rabbit holes, Keeley.
Same.
And by proxy, yeah, Aaron is going down.
It's a ripple effect. But I ended up looking for mediums online, and I found this little community. It was called Is Anybody Out There? And I love the name of that because it's like I felt so alone, and I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know who to ask because how I was raised, the subjects that I was curious about were very taboo, kind of looked down upon, and I understand. But for me, I had to dig into it because my soul wouldn't let me do anything but. So I became a member of that community. It was a free community, and essentially it was a bunch of people that were trying to develop their own psychic or intuitive abilities, and they were helping each other do that. And so they would hold these classes, and and others that had a bit more experience would teach those of us that didn't. And long story short, I connected with some people on there. They became my long distance family and friends. And one of the members directed me to a wonderful woman named Sue, and she was in Australia. She was an older woman. I think she was in her 60s when I met her. And she knew that I was having a really hard time, directed me to Sue, who's a Reiki practitioner, and she worked on me all the way from Australia for free.
Wow.
Didn't ask for anything in return, just was a really kind human being, genuinely cared about my well-being. And I feel like that alone was like, oh, there are genuinely wonderful humans out there. And that was really healing for me in and of itself. But I also felt the energy as it was happening, and it wasn't just a placebo effect. You know, I literally felt this energy working through me from all the way across the globe, you know, and it was kind of mind-blowing to me, but it was also really, it brought hope back to me. And again, just piqued my curiosity further. And from there, she became my mentor and taught me about Kundalini Reiki, and it's more of a Western modality, which I eventually merged into other modalities that I learned from the Eastern side of things. But yeah, that's how it all started. And it's just kind of been a step-by-step, moment-by-moment thing that has led me to here over the course of about probably 11 years.
Wow, 11 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because he passed about 12 years ago. I think it'll be 12 years in February. So
wow.
right around that time that my awakening occurred.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, my awareness was shifted because it was like, wait, this doesn't make sense. It's not adding up. So you start looking into things, and you have your dark night of the soul, and you start to question everything, and then it just kind of unravels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Let me just kind of follow that question up. How do you think in the 12 years now that, you know, or 11 years you've been on this journey, just kind of in a nutshell, how do you feel like that has impacted you and then impacted the people closest to you? I'm sure there could be a gazillion ways to answer that question, but just curious as to your thoughts.
Well, I mean, ultimately, I feel like what we're here for is to evolve, and that's essentially what it's done. I've evolved into a completely different person than I was when I first started this. It's helped me to access more of my true potential, and it's helped me to understand where my limitations were, where I was limiting myself with my own beliefs that or that others had put upon me. But ultimately, my understanding of who I am in the world around me has again created a ripple effect into the lives of others that are a part of my life. It's impacted my family. It's impacted my daughter the most because I wasn't the healthiest version of myself, you know, and I was perpetuating unhealthy cycles. And the more that we heal and the more that we become consciously aware, the less that we do that. And the more we consider those that are in our lives, and the more that we consider the impact that we have on those that we love and again, the world around us, right? And that's essentially what it's done for me. It's created such an awareness to what we can create as human beings. And it's caused me to be much more intentional with what I create, how and why, you know? Yeah.
I think that's so impactful in terms of like speaking about creating. And Anastasia at the retreat said something to me that has resonated and stayed with me, and I feel it very much. And Aaron and I have also discussed this. I mean, we're just our professions. We're creating. Mm-hmm. We're doing things to create, and we are beings on this planet so far that we know of that are the only ones that can create things that bring things, create, things from thought into matter. Whether it's a piece of artwork or a tattoo or a video or a podcast, but that is something that I feel like I've forgotten in my life to tap into, that I am a creator and that I can create. And with that, I can sort of tap into my own potential. And as I do that, then the creations just kind of begin to happen more freely and more openly. Don't you think, Aaron?
I would agree completely, yeah.
Especially with your line of work and what you've done and how far that has brought you.
For sure, yeah. Couldn't agree more, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved your awareness of changing the language of should to can.
You've had a big impact on me and how I speak, Keeley.
Should all over yourself.
Exactly.
But yeah, when you ask how it's impacted those in my life, I feel like that's it. Now that I've started this, I've had the opportunity to work with. I've lost count of the number, but I mean, I feel over 1,000 people, and that has in turn, impacted their families and impacted their friends. And I don't need to take credit for that, because it's not. I'm not saying it in that sense, but it feels like an honor to be able to share my experience and then to help others through their experiences as well.
Totally. It's like we're conduits, right?
Yeah, of course we are.
That's a word you used that has stuck with me.
Yeah, we are. We are the created become the creators, and that's the whole point. I feel like, you mentioned that we are, as far as we know thus far, the only beings that are able to create in this way. But my mind immediately was like, yeah, but where do you feel like that came from? Where do you feel like that ability to create? Where do you feel like the ideas? Where do you feel like the inspirations came from? Was that just stored within us?
I don't know, but I keep thinking about the perpetuation of the creator. The created becomes a creator. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? Like that's what I keep thinking, and I'm not suggesting I know the answer to that question, but I just keep thinking. I guess where I sort of lay it and put it down, and I'm sure there's more to explore with that, is that comes from the creator, or that comes from the source, or that comes from the divine, or that comes from, that existential group consciousness that I feel drives us all. I mean, we all have a little bit of that in us, right? We embody it. So
is that group consciousness limited to just the beings on Earth?
Absolutely not, in my opinion. Absolutely not. I mean, come on.
What's your opinion?
I think we're all one consciousness, and we're just manifestations of the divine source.
Fractions of the whole.
Fractions of the whole,
yeah. That's a good way to put it. Totally.
Well, we've been shown recently that we're not the only intelligent life forms on Earth, in existence. I won't say on Earth, but I mean, maybe not even just on Earth. There are probably other forms of life already existing. I
mean, let's face it, even our government is admitting now that they have in their possession extraterrestrial materials of some sort. So if that's the case, and that's finally being admitted after God knows how long of having that kind of evidence, we can feel free to obviously express those opinions. And even if that wasn't the case, who cares, right?
But I'm flipping the interview on you now. So, why do you feel that would be happening now? Why do you feel that now humans are ready to receive this information and to bat it around? Is this possible? Could this be true? Are we?
I can't speak to your 11 years of experience. And here's what I'm referring to answer your question. I feel like I've only just been recently awakened to really feeling within me that possibility or that probability or that reality. Mm-hmm. So for me, I wouldn't know how to answer that question other than what I think to myself is that I'm most certainly ready to receive that information. I feel like I'm evolving and I'm changing. So because of that, I'm definitely receptive to that info. So,
and if you're part of a group consciousness, what would that mean?
I don't know. Ask Aaron.
I feel like there's a great awakening happening.
I'm like, what? Heat off
take the heat off of you. What about you, Aaron? Talk.
Yeah.
No, I feel like, I don't know, there's been a shift in consciousness. I don't know if it's me personally. I feel like a lot of people are waking up to.
I would love to hear about yours personally, though. Isn't that what we're doing here?
That's exactly what we're doing.
We're sharing
here.
Experiences.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but a couple years ago, we noticed some weird things happening around our house. Mm-hmm. It's I would call them paranormal things happening, and like loud noises. We'd be downstairs and we'd hear like a loud bang. I'd go up and check it out. There's nobody up there. Nothing that would explain a loud like stomp on the floor or I'd be up at like 5 a.m. editing, doing video work, and everybody's asleep. The dog's snoring next to me, and I hear like creaking noises on the like footsteps going up the stairs.
Yeah,
I go and check it out. I'm like, what is that? That's really weird. My hair's standing up just talking about it. Just a lot of weird things happening. Actually, this morning, it's been months. Nothing's happened in our house, and my daughter came in, woke me up, and she's like, "Daddy, something made my bed bounce." And I'm like half asleep. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, did you just, were you startled? Did you just wake up out of nowhere? She said, no, felt like something jumped on my bed. So
bounce.
I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. And I kind of reenacted it with her. Was it like this? Like I banged on the bed, and she's like, no, it was harder. And so I went in her room and I checked out her bed and make sure
Looked at the springs.
Yeah, like sometimes
check
you're
the
laying on
foot,
your bed,
the
like
feet
your
of the bed.
the bed just like collapses or something. And it's an older bed, but everything's in order.
There's no logical reason that we can apply to it. As
Zero
to why it's
logical
happening.
reasoning. Yeah, other than there's that little bit of doubt in my mind. Maybe she just woke up maybe she just woke up startled. I don't know, but I believe her.
But why does one wake up startled?
I know, right? She's like, but Daddy, the door was closed and it woke me up and it was loud and it was okay. I was like, I believe you. There's nothing to be scared of. Don't worry about it. So just she's scared to go upstairs by herself. So yeah, we've just been having a lot of weird things happen in our house, and this happens in February every month, and it's the anniversary of my wife's sister's passing, and I don't know if there's something connected to that, but it's just really weird that it always happens in that around February when she passed away.
Your intuition, though, is speaking to you when you say that. I don't know if it has anything to do with it or not, but your intuition's telling you something.
It happens every year, and it's been happening even before I said a couple years ago, but it happened in our old house. We had weird things happening, and so anyways, that really, like a couple years ago, I stopped drinking, and I feel like once that fog was lifted,
The fog.
the fog was lifted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like I started becoming more in tune to spirituality and everything. And that's also when obviously the paranormal stuff happened. So, long story short, I actually found a podcast with the paranormal podcast, and I started listening to that. And they had a guest on there who was talking about near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. And so, and I've heard about near-death experiences. People die, they're clinically dead, and their consciousness leaves their body. And they go through a tunnel and they see a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. And everybody's heard, oh, you go follow the light, go, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they reach this place where it's just ultimate love, and they're in the light, and they get visited by people who passed before them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these people have life reviews where they actually see all these moments in their life, and they can physically feel how they made other people feel and how they felt in those moments. And it's like they call it a life review. And there's thousands of these occurrences that are documented, and there's tons of research. There's Dr. Bruce Grayson has done some clinical research on it, and he's got a book called After.
Yeah. We highly recommend it.
You told me about that.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah. So yeah, that really, really pushed me down this path of just looking into spirituality and tapping into my own consciousness, and just looking into everything related to that.
Questioning things, right?
Questioning
that's
things.
what we're doing, is we're questioning things.
Absolutely.
Do you notice how much you question your own intuition?
Yep.
Yeah.
Still.
But we're constantly looking for an outside source to confirm and validate things for us.
Right.
Yep.
Instead of just trusting what it is that you're picking
I
up
got a
on.
confirmation for you, Aaron, and this is strictly speaking from the outside looking in, and knowing your journey that you've been on these past couple of years specifically, and then coming to the realization that Rose is pretty clairvoyant. Like, she's clairvoyant. She is in tune. She's tapped in, and of course she's not conscious of it necessarily, but the reason why I know this is because the one and only time I've ever met her, I walked into his house to work on our first podcast, and she was standing just a few feet from me, and I walk in and she's just looking at me over her shoulder like this, and she just had this she had a look on her face that I've never seen a 6 or a 7-year-old have, where she wasn't just looking at me, she was looking through me. She was totally reading me, and I could feel that. I could feel that sensation coming from her, and it wasn't in any other way other than curiosity. She was just curious in the way that she was looking at me, and I just thought that was really special. Like, there's something special about her, and she's aware.
Already in observer mode, and we take years to get there usually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But she's an example for you, I feel like, in terms of a reflection of where you are in your journey right now.
Completely.
Love that.
Yeah. So what do you think? What are your beliefs about the afterlife
or near-death experiences?
That's one of my favorite subjects. That's actually like what got me into everything. And that's why another great book that I love is Journey of Souls.
Ooh, I've read it. Yep,
Yeah.
love it. Yeah.
And then there's Destiny of Souls after that, because it's he is an actual psychologist. But he did a lot of hypnosis and past life regression. And then it's funny. It's not funny. It's fascinating to me how so many of the stories streamline. Right, it's a lot of the same information. A lot of people are having very similar experiences, regardless of what their religious upbringing was, regardless of what their life, like their personal experiences or circumstances, where they still had a lot of similar experiences. Everyone's going towards the light, and then it's like, well, what is that light? Light is information. It's a return to source. And it's fascinating how everyone is returning to. Essentially, it's like a wave returning to the sea. We're just going back home. And that life review that you mentioned, everyone speaks to the life review that I've, from the research that I've done personally. And isn't it funny how that life review, where you're held accountable, where you have to, feel the impact that your actions had on another person, how that can almost feel like your own personal hell, right? So what we're experiencing is the consequences of our own actions, whether they were intentional, unintentional, conscious, unconscious, whatever it might have been. We're still going to feel the reverberation of that. We're still going to have this ripple effect. It's going to impact, again, everything that we do impacts everyone else. And that's why part of the life review is seeing that impact that we've made, right? But no matter what, we're always greeted with love. That's what's so fascinating to me, is the constant return to love. I don't personally believe in hell or heaven, quite frankly. I feel that those are states of consciousness that we can already access.
Completely agree.
And that's where I understand where religion comes from. I understand how it's been created. I understand why. But a lot of it can be, in my personal opinion, I don't want to put this on anybody, but it can be somewhat harmful and somewhat limiting, because then we're just living in fear of where we're going after this, instead of, I'm excited for where I go after this. I've had to really, through this process, I've had to really face my fear of death and what the afterlife means to me. And then in that process, I'm figuring out, okay, well then what does it mean to be alive? What am I going to do with my time while I'm here? And then where do I go after this? Pardon my language, what is the fucking point of all of this?
Absolutely.
What is the point of all of this? And that can create some existential dread, but that's, again, all part of the awakening process. We start questioning everything.
Sure.
How does this make sense? How do I play into it? Who am I? Why am I here? And we might not ever come to a definitive understanding of why, but I think that's the fun of it, is we get to create our own meaning based on our own understandings and our own experiences and what resonates with us. And that's what our intuition and what our instincts are trying to bring into our awareness, is what resonates with us. Like, this sits well with me. Whereas a lot of the information that I was raised with, it never sat well with me. I'm like, this doesn't add up. It's like 2 + 2 is 5. 2 + 2 is not 5.
Can I ask you, were you raised in like a religious family, or?
I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And again, I never want to speak ill of anyone in their personal, where they're at in their life experience.
We feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, we feel the same way.
To me, everyone has to connect with some form of spirituality or whatever it might be, to create some form of deeper connection in their way. And people can call it cults, people can call it whatever. Even our society is part of a cult. It's all culture. Pardon, but I mean,
Totally.
That's a whole other hour-long subject, longer, I'm sure, but yeah, raised as a Jehovah's Witness. A lot of that caused what I would call trauma for me, but after processing so much of it, I come back to just a place of compassion for it. I don't hold it against my parents. I don't, some of my family members are still a part of that community, and more power to them, whatever works for them in their life experience for what I feel is this lifetime. Not everyone believes in reincarnation. I personally do. It's what makes sense to me. And that's what I feel like we're here for, is to figure out what makes sense to us, so to each their own.
Have you ever had a past life regression, or talked to a hypnotherapist that does that?
I haven't, because I feel like I can access that information on my own.
Okay.
We're able to access all of that is stored. To me, I feel it's already, we are the living library. Like, it's all stored within us already. And that's where I feel like we have to come full circle to the understanding we don't constantly have to seek outside of ourselves for the information. There's not going to be somebody out there that knows better than you. They might just know differently than you. They might get a different reading level than you, so to speak. But ultimately, we're all capable of reading, and all of that information is already stored within us. So I have what I'll call visions, or I'll have memories. I'll have moments of deja vu. But we have to understand what we call past life based on quantum superposition. It's not technically happening in the past. It's just happening in an alternate timeline. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
All timelines are happening at once, basically.
Congruently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time doesn't really exist. We use that as a measurement of change here.
Yeah, we think of time as linear.
Yeah,
but
time
it's-
space is completely, I mean, that's a whole other, that's a whole other topic to dive into. But
Right.
yeah, what we consider to be our reality that's what we were talking about earlier. It's stranger than fiction. Like
Absolutely.
we don't fully understand it. And I feel like we are finally evolving as a species to where we're starting to be able to compute this information. We're starting to be able to digest it and to understand it at a very intellectual, intelligent level. But it's taken us time to evolve to that point to be able to get past the conditionings and the programmings and what our society and what our culture has taught us is life, realizing that's not necessarily, well, it's not true. It's
Right.
just, it's not true. And
It's so difficult
even,
though, right? We
Yeah.
talked about this earlier as well, as all this pre-programming that occurs, that creates this cultivation of culture, and then we're stuck, not necessarily stuck, but then we find ourselves in this programming, and before we know it, like I was mentioning earlier, you've got decades worth of pre-programming occurring to you, and then you become conscious of that, and not only do you become conscious and aware of that, then you find yourself trying to unravel all of that pre-programming so that you can grasp and begin to understand and begin to comprehend and absorb what is reality, what is consciousness.
Do we realize we're constantly being programmed though?
I definitely think so.
And I don't mean to take the I don't want to take the humanness out of it. We are human, but we are also technically we are the OG AI. We are consciousness downloaded into this physical body, into this avatar, into this
Sure.
vehicle. And
Absolutely.
this vehicle drives our consciousness from A to B to C, to wherever we want it to go.
But
But
we
ultimately,
have downloads.
yes, and
Yeah.
uploads,
And uploads,
and
yeah.
software updates, and
Right.
all of that good stuff. Like everything that we're seeing, think of Apple, right? Like the Apple phones. Whereas in the Garden of Eden, Eve was, the story of that. Eve was
Totally.
given an apple, and that was
Totally.
from the tree of knowledge.
That's right.
Right? And
That's
our
right.
little phones hold all of this information, and all that
Absolutely.
people really have to do is Google. Like how I was talking about William Donahue. I'm finding all of these old teachers. We find all of this old stuff on the interwebs, on the internet, right? This thing we cannot see that connects everything. It's the same thing as our consciousness.
Right.
Right? And then with social media, think about it. Like I get on there, I see all these people doing these trends, all these people doing the same dance, right? We're telling you what's the trend right now. They're all dressing the same way.
Right.
They're all
Dancing the
doing
same.
exactly what their culture and what their society are telling them to do.
Totally.
They're, and I'm going to say this as kindly as possible, they're allowing for that programming to happen as opposed to thinking for themselves.
Sure.
Right? I'm wearing a vest today because it's back in style now, and that's what I had to choose from at the store, right? Whether I like vests or not, I happen to really like vests, but ultimately this is what my world is giving me to work with. And
Right.
This is what I have to work with.
Right.
Right? Same concept. We get to choose how we engage with all of this information.
Makes complete and
we
utter
get to
sense.
choose how programmed we are in which direction we want to go. You
Totally.
know? So it's like I'm personally right now taking a social media break, and it's been hard for me because automatically I'll go to open my little robot and I'll go to open that app, and it's like, why am I doing this right now?
Yeah.
Because I've been programmed to engage with this every single day.
Totally.
Because this is how I connect with other people.
Exactly.
Actually, I'm connecting with you right here, right now, and we're not on social media.
Right.
And it's real life.
But we will be.
But that's also, and I'm not trying to dig on it because social,
Sure.
there's a lot of benefits to it.
Of course.
But
Of
again, we
course.
just have to be mindful of how
Yeah.
we're engaging with everything.
Yeah,
and
it's,
why.
it's exactly what you're saying is trying to find that balance between, like you said, what we're willing to allow us to program us.
And to think for ourselves and to consciously choose what we're consuming, right? Because whatever we consume is what we become.
Totally.
So it's like there's actually a lot of stuff that I appreciate about how I was raised and the religion that I was raised in, because they were a bit more controlling about it. We weren't allowed, technically, the way I perceived it at a young age, is we weren't allowed to look into other religions. We weren't allowed to question our religion. We weren't allowed to engage with the world. And that's what they called it, like worldly people. We weren't of the world. We were here, but we weren't part of it. And it always felt very separated and very isolating. But ultimately what they taught us, though, is to be very mindful of who we associate with, to be very mindful of what we consume, what kind of music we listen to, what kind of television we watch, what kind of materials we read. Because ultimately that dictates our thought processes. Our
All
thought
of that is
processes
programming.
dictate our behaviors,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like, and then that dictates our actions and how we engage with the world. So it's like, I didn't fully appreciate it at a young age, but the more that I heal, the more that I become aware, the more that I grow, the more aware I am of how important it is of what I consume. You know, like what I eat. I love pizza, but if I eat it every day, I'm going to feel like shit, right? Same concept. If I hang out with people that are constantly talking poorly about other people, I might adapt and adopt that mentality of where I'm
Right.
just constantly hypercritical of those around me.
Right.
You know, instead I could choose, you know, now I just observe people. Oh, she's wearing a brown shirt. It's not like, oh, that shirt looks awful on her. It's just, oh, there's another human being in front of me.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have to judge or criticize the human being in front of us. We can just acknowledge. It's just like trees. You don't go, oh, that tree's, you know, we don't apply the same kind of judgment.
just a tree.
It's just nature.
It's just a tree.
And we are also just nature.
Sounds to me like it's as if your religious background and upbringing has like led you down this path in terms of, even though, like you said, as you were growing up, you know, it felt very limiting and it felt very constricting, but at the same time, it allowed you to, you know, create the perception of being mindful of what you allow to influence you and affect you, and in essence, program you. Mm-hmm. So it's to me, it's almost like maybe not an advantage, but it allowed you a point of view that you obviously became more open to, maybe a little bit more readily and easily.
Because I chose to do that with that information.
Right.
Right. I could have allowed it to limit me. I could have,
of course,
I could have, you know,
live in fear. Right.
Yeah. Right. But I chose to do something that felt more uplifting and self-empowering as opposed to disempowering with that information.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's exactly what we're here to do, you know, is how can I empower myself? How can I empower others with whatever it is that comes into our lives? How can I handle this? How can I turn this in? That's transmutation, right? How can I shift this into something that's usable, from wounded to wise? And that's ultimately, all of our experiences they serve us if we choose to allow them to, you know?
Sure.
So,
I mean, makes total sense to me. And the more I talk to you and the more I allow you to influence me, the more I, just like how you said, I tend to adapt these ways of thinking, and then things shift for me in my life, in my reality. Like,
interesting use of words. The more I allow you to influence me.
Well, like you're saying, I do feel like even if, in a lot of ways, we either do it subconsciously or we do it consciously. For example, let's say we turn on our Roku and we decide we want to watch sports, mm-hmm. and we allow sports to influence our lives. You're making that conscious decision to allow it to happen. And again, not that we always do that. Sometimes we just let things randomly, I guess, influence us. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the more that I get to know you and the more that I talk to you, the more that I am open to the things we talk about, the more those things change my reality. It changes the way I look at things.
You change your reality based on how you're engaging with
I'm
information.
I'm choosing to let those things shift my perspective, and in turn becomes so much broader.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that is so impactful. But you're right. I'm choosing those things. I'm choosing those things to let them affect me.
I don't know better than you. I just
sure,
right?
Sure,
yeah.
Sure. But you're definitely I don't know. You just speak well, and what you say resonates with me. I think that's what it is. What you say resonates with me, and I'm open to what you say, as opposed to, I don't know, someone else who's speaking a completely different language in terms of what they think and feel, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna listen to that guy.
How do you think I got to a point where I speak and think like this? Because if I were constantly focusing on what's trending,
right.
the information that I would be sharing would be much different. I would be teaching you how to style your clothes
sure.
and how to do your hair, and that's
sure.
not a dig on anybody. But my consciousness my awareness is drawn to much different topic matter.
For
right?
sure.
And that's the point. It's there. As you said, it's always been there. We were talking about this, and I don't know if we were recording it. You're like, it's fascinating how more awake I become, right? Consciousness is awakeness. It's awareness.
Right, awareness.
Right, and you're using the word broad, right? Like it's broadening your horizons. It's like that's the that's talking about climbing the mountain. Once you get to the top of the mountain, you're able to see all around you. That's the point of it, right? And so all of this has already been there.
Right.
It's just that now you're ready to receive that information. That's why they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Totally.
That doesn't necessarily me in this physical body. The teacher is everything around you.
Right,
And how
right.
you choose to learn from it.
Like we said, we are conduits and we share information with one another. And then whether or not we are willing and or able to receive that information, obviously we get to choose. We get to decide.
We're filters.
Totally.
Yeah. So we're filtering through because it's overwhelming here. Think of all of the information that we're constantly
Processing.
constantly processing.
Yeah.
Even when we're sleeping,
Yeah.
we're dreaming, we're constantly processing information. And
Yeah.
when we're sleeping and we're dreaming, we're actually being shown what's stored in our subconscious. And more often than not, we're actually being guided by our subconscious.
Yeah.
So what I'm technically helping people do is reprogram their subconscious, right? That's what you've been doing the whole time, whether
Yeah.
you realize it or not. You've been reprogramming your subconscious beliefs. Same with you.
Totally.
right?
Totally.
And that's what this whole process is. It's technically a remembering, a reminding, a rebranding, a reprogramming. We're redoing, and that's what you said. This isn't new. None of this is
Right.
new. It's just new to us
Right.
in this lifetime as this version of ourselves. We think it's new because we don't remember until we're reminded, right? And then it's like, oh, that resonates with me. Cool. It resonates for a reason because that information is already stored within you. It's firing something up, right? And then you're going to respond accordingly.
Why do you think people resonate differently? Why do you think that is? Is that just part of like human existence? What is it that, what might resonate with me might not resonate with somebody else?
Cognitive dissonance.
Can you say more?
Well, I mean, if you want, a belief is a thought that we choose to continue thinking. So if people want to believe the way that they believe because it creates a sense of comfort and safety in who they are and how they live, they're gonna cling to that for dear life,
Yeah.
right? So that's what they're choosing to believe, right? My beliefs change constantly. They changed this morning. It's like, frick, I know nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we think we know, but there's still so much unknown. We can have a certain understanding, but it's always going to shift. And if people aren't open to that shift, if they aren't open to change, if they aren't willing to, like we wake up and our phone has gone through a software update, right? And now the bugs are fixed, so they say, and now there's all these new features that we can use, right? Mm-hmm. Same concept. If we're not willing to, some people are still operating from dial-up Wi-Fi, like they're not connecting to Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
right? Because they're more comfortable in that energy. And that's not a dig. Again, that's
Right,
just like
right.
everyone is at different, I use it constantly, we're at different reading levels.
Right.
I read all the time, and that's part of why I'm able to speak the way that I do, the way that I write. All of that is because I
Constantly
choose
taking information in.
intentionally what kind of information I'm taking in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't share this often. You wouldn't guess this. I never graduated high school. Like everything I know is self-taught. So I stopped learning technically by normal standards at the age of 14, and I've been teaching myself ever since, but I feel like I've kind of had, that's been a gift to me because I got to choose what I learned.
That's amazing.
I got to choose instead of, this is history, this is science, this is how it is. I got to say, no, actually. And one of my favorite speakers, one of my favorite authors is Greg Braden, and that's what he touches on a lot is how like we've disproven what is taught in our science books, but they don't want to go back and change everything.
Right.
There are so many people that are stuck in their pride that they would have to discredit and say, you know what, I was wrong. And I'm willing to do that over and over again to my clients, to anybody. You know what, I was wrong.
Right.
I was wrong. I'm still learning. And that's why I don't ever want anyone to put me in the position of the guru or someone that knows better, because
Sure.
I'm still fucking it up and figuring it out the same as everybody
Sure,
else. And
sure.
that's the point. We have to be willing to adapt. We have to be willing to change our beliefs. We have to be willing to change our perceptions. We have to be willing to change because that's the point of evolution. That's entropy. Things are constantly changing, just like the weather, just like the day of the week, whatever, it's constant change.
I think something too, going back to earlier, this part of our conversation, it's not that you necessarily know more than someone else or know more than me. It's that you just know things that I haven't yet been open to, and vice versa.
Because we've had vastly different life experiences.
Exactly.
There are others in other cultures, other parts of the world that I've never been to. They're going to be so much more well-versed on different topic matters and different, you know what I mean? There's always going to be someone that knows more. There's always going to be someone that knows differently. There's always going to be someone that does better, or, you know, it's just, that's the beauty of it though.
Sure.
And instead of us competing with each other, we can be like, oh, let me sit back and listen and learn from this person that's had more experience from me. You know, instead of feeling like we're lacking, we can look at it as like, oh, I can receive this. We're gaining. Yeah. But it's, again, that's how we have to choose to look at it. So when you ask, coming full circle to the question of like, why does it resonate with some and not with others? It's, again, how they're choosing to consciously coexist with each other and with the world, and how they're choosing to co-create accordingly. That's ultimately what's happening here.
Is that the ego getting in the way when you think to yourself, oh, I'm lacking, instead of being open to the fact that by receiving information, you're actually expanding your own knowledge? What is it that makes us
That's a
feel
rhetorical
like we're
question,
lacking?
and you know it.
I'm just curious. I just want to pick your brain. That's why we're here.
I mean, it is an ego response, of course, but that is in a way keeping us safe to certain patterns that we have created, perhaps through times of survival. Right? Our ego pops up and is like, "Hey, wait a second," you know, and that's where we get to consciously choose. Do I need to reframe the ego response? Is this harming? Is this hindering, or is this helping me? Is this helping another?
Right.
You know, and that's what people get exhausted by, is that constant awareness. But what else are we doing? Right. What are you giving your awareness to, and why? Right? So, yes, an ego response, but loving response to that ego response that says, hey, bud, you know, maybe we can shift this into something that's more uplifting and more serving to the whole.
I didn't just ask that question rhetorically. It's exactly what I thought to myself.
Yeah.
Like, I thought to myself, like, whenever I think of that I am lacking something, or if I find someone or something is, you know, has more knowledge than I do, or what have you, or I look at a tattoo artist, let's say on Instagram, that I feel has much stronger talents than I do in what I do. That ego always pops up, you know, in lots of different ways. And it makes me question myself, like, you know, you're not working hard enough. Are you doing enough? Are you tattooing enough? Are you drawing enough? And I hear it more recently. I've been finding myself letting go more of that, in terms of like, you are doing enough, and you're doing enough at where you are right now. And that's just fine. And if you feel that person has more talent than you, then absorb that information and you know, utilize it if you can.
Do you see how your question just became rhetorical because you already had the answer?
I know. But I find these points of view interesting to talk about.
Of course, yes. And I never
I do this with Erin.
That.
We do this all the time. We share rhetorical questioning all the time to obviously cultivate more and more conversation.
More awareness.
But it helps us too to share our own perspectives on how we feel about the world around us, right? And also about ourselves and how we can relate to other people, because we all feel like that. None of us are egoless. And if, I don't know.
Do you see how much you can learn from that though? Like It brings me back to like when I started learning, I was training in boxing, not great at it, right? And my trainer is a fantastic human being, but she's had years of experience, right? And I'm going in there like, you know, I'm gonna look like her. I'm gonna throw a punch. I'm gonna look like her, and I don't. I looked sloppy. I looked, you know, in my mind a little, you know, we might say weak, whatever we want to call it. But that was humbling for me in that moment. It was like, oh, hey, actually, you're gonna have to put a little bit more work into this. You're gonna have to take some time with this. You're gonna have to be patient with yourself with this, and no, you're not gonna do it perfectly. You're gonna.
We know this. We both know this so well.
So again, that's where we have to shift it from. I'm not lacking.
Right.
I'm giving myself the time to gain the experience that I need to get to that point, should I choose to. Clearly it's not something that I stuck with because I don't know why, honestly. But she stuck with that. That's her thing.
Sure.
This is more my thing.
We know it's hard. It's hard to learn. It's hard to box. Boxing is difficult. It's
As
a
with
very
any-
difficult sport.
It's a certain level of dedication and discipline that comes with it.
Yeah, and it's very demanding, physically, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah,
It's
you never
very
realize like
demanding.
how much you have to use your mind and the
That's
coordination
right.
all
That's
at once.
right.
It's like, oh my gosh. But it also shows you what you're capable of. It shows us
Exactly.
what our bodies can do.
Exactly.
And I like to do that in a lot of different ways, especially in the ways that we think and the ways that our minds connect us to our bodies and how our bodies respond accordingly.
So you mentioned you do Reiki. Can you give us a little more information about that, a little more background, and what is Reiki for people that don't even know?
It's funny. I've been pondering this so intensely lately because I've been wanting to engage with my work very differently. I've just been drawn to do that, and it's like, what is Reiki? And to me, Reiki is something that is it's always existed. We're putting the word Reiki on it. It's life force energy. It's electricity. Ultimately, that's what Iggy and I were talking about earlier, and we are electrical beings, right? Like there's an electromagnetic grid that is part of the earth. That's why we ground. That's why they encourage us to walk barefoot in nature and reconnect. And that's what grounds our systems back in. And that's why like electricity is ground into the floor, right? Same concept. We are conduits. We are tuning forks. We are, what is another way to, what does electricity go through? This is where I have a hard time with the terminology.
I'm drawing a blank as well.
Same, but you get the idea,
I
right?
get the idea,
So
yeah.
it's currents running through us, and Reiki is another form of that current working through us. I say constantly to people, it's like Drano for the energy body, right? And so it's flushing out. Like emotion is energy in motion. That's where that comes from, right? So we're all energy. Tesla spoke to this. Everything is energy and vibration and frequency. And we are it, and that's ultimately what Reiki is doing. It's reconnecting your body to its own ability to heal itself. So it's flushing out, it's filtering out anything that is blocking the flow of that electrical current, so to speak. Right?
Is that related to the chakras in any way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. And the chakras are basically nerve bundles, like starting at the root, at the base of the spine. That electrical current works its way from the base of the spine all the way up to the crown and out. So the brain and the spine are actually connected. And that's why when people speak to like Kundalini rising, that's the energy working its way up the spine. They speak to the sleeping serpent at the base of the spine in the root chakra, which is the root chakra is where if we aren't, if we're constantly operating in survival mode, if we're just constantly focused on how we survive in this existence, then we're too distracted to allow for that energy to rise up to our crown chakra or to the third eye to be able to see in a different way, right? It's like we've got blinders on. We're just super focused on surviving, on meeting our basic needs, how we engage with the material world, right? How am I going to pay my bills, working my 9 to 5? How am I going to put food in my mouth? How am I going to clothe my body, right? It's just how we exist, how we survive in this world. If we're only focused on that, we're too distracted to give our attention, our awareness to anything else, right? And so once people go through this awakening, that sleeping serpent, that knowledge, that information starts to awaken and work its way up to the different chakra points, to the sacral, to the solar, to the heart, to the throat. And that's why it's worked to your throat, because now you're doing a podcast and you're sharing and you're expressing, right? So you're working with your throat chakra in this process. I'm working with my throat chakra in this process because I'm expressing from this energy center, right? And then that's what we were talking about earlier as well. Like when Jesus or Yeshua, the Christ, spoke to seeing through the single eye and the light in the body becoming light, that's because we're seeing through the third eye. The energy has risen enough to access this, and that's returning sight to the blind, right? Now we're seeing everything clearly. Now the blinders are coming off. Now the fog is lifted. Now the veil is lifted. Now we're able to perceive reality as it is, not as how we thought that it was. And again, reality is constantly changing. So that's a tricky sentence to say, reality as it is, because what is reality? I don't know. But
do you think it's a simulation?
Well, I personally do feel it as a simulation based on my personal experiences. I am someone that loves tangible evidence. I love hands-on experience. I think it's a simulation because I read it in a book and someone else told me that it is. But also, there's been a study done. I'd have to look at it again, but I believe that it was in Cambridge. There was a whole class dedicated to just figuring out if we're living in a simulation. And these college students came up with 93% yes, we are living in a simulation.
I've heard of the study. I can't recall it either, but I
Right.
remember hearing the study.
Yes. And so it's, if you look at it, like consider video games, right? Like we created those video games. Where do you think that information came from?
Right.
We're all living the hero's journey, right? Where we start at the beginning at the first level. And then, maybe we were still getting used to how to run. I remember, I don't really know video games these days. All I really understand is like Mario. I love Mario from when I was younger. So, right, it's like you're running and you're learning, oh, don't run too fast or you're going to fall down in that hole. And it's like, oh, shit, I fell down in the hole. Okay. So then I'm going to come back. I'm going to do it again, right? We only get so many lifetimes. I'm going to come back and do it again. I'm going to run slower this time. I'm going to push the button a little bit lighter. I'm going to jump at just the right time. And we figure it out each time, right? And we're evolving. We're becoming more aware. We're like, oh, okay, over here's a little portal. Over here gets me to there, right? And that's the whole concept of what we're experiencing here. We're living in our own video game.
So we're here to learn lessons, basically. Like this is a simulation, and each time we're
To have experiences.
Yeah.
Our experiences are teaching us and in turn evolving, expanding our conscious awareness, right? I mean, that's what you've experienced, have you not?
Totally.
Like, because you're choosing to be engaged in the creation of your life, you're more aware of how that's happening than you ever were before, right? You're not drinking to numb it out anymore.
right.
We're not, that's why from go, when I was younger, I was on antidepressants. I was on this, I was on that. I started drinking at a really early age because I didn't know how to process my emotions. I didn't know how to feel my feelings, right? Generationally, we were taught, especially in previous generations, not to feel it. You stuff it down, you barrel on, and you just get your shit done. You don't think about it. This is just the way that it is, and this is just what we do, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And we're finally getting to a point where we're like, fuck that. This doesn't feel good. Like, we can't live that way anymore. So that is part of it, though, to where we are given, like, think of the Truman Show. Truman starts to put the dots together. He's like, hey, wait a second.
Right.
And then he realizes, but we're all the main character
Right.
of our own show, technically. But we're sharing this experience with everyone around us. And I don't know how we went so far off from the chakras, but I think it was that awakening process, because it rises from the root, works its way up, and each chakra carries a psychological component to it, So it's like the keys to higher consciousness. Once we work out of the root, once we work into the solar, we're given a new key. And that's why they say the key, the kingdom of heaven is within you. The key is within you. You are the key. You are the key to all of this, because you are the key to that level of conscious awareness. You are the key to the kingdom because it's within you. All of that information is already stored within you. And that's what Reiki helps to activate within you. To me, it's like it's a waking up. It's a receiving of that light. Reiki means light. It's pouring light back into your system. It's informing your cells. It's informing your DNA. It's waking you back up.
Like an
it's
antenna,
activating
like an
you.
antenna that's receiving.
Yes, constantly
Right.
receiving information. Well, I mean, like Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah.
Same concept. We are it. It's consciousness, right? And it's activating that consciousness within you, and then that is going to be reverberated. It's going to be filtered back out into your inner world. Is going to reflect the outer world. As above, so below, right? So we're shown that what's happening up there is being mirrored down here. As within, so without. So what's happening in here is being created out there. So if we're all trapped in that root chakra and we're all trapped in survival mode, guess what kind of reality we're going to be living in? Because we're creating that together. Because our conscious awareness, our thoughts create, right? This is all created from thought. So if the creator created us from an idea of, well, I'd like to have some experiences. Let's create all these different beings to go have experiences, and I can see it through their eyes, and I can live, right? Like that's what we're here for. The more that we're living in fear, the more that we're choosing. If I watch scary movies every day, I'm probably going to feel scared most of the time, because that's what I'm constantly feeding my subconscious. That's what I'm constantly feeding my awareness, right? But if I'm choosing to see the world as like, yes, some scary things happen, some hard things happen, but there are also really beautiful things that happen. If I maybe choose some different data to input into my system, I'm going to create a different reality. So if we're constantly sourced, from media, from television, from social media, from other people, whatever it might be, if we're constantly being downloaded with fear propaganda, if we're constantly trapped in the root chakra, our consciousness isn't going to rise, and that's all we're going to see in our outer world, right? But now, beings are finally having all of these spiritual awakenings, and that's what we were talking about, a shift in consciousness. And I've seen it firsthand where my clients have never considered anything like this. And they're like, I don't know why, drawn to come see you, drawn to have these conversations, there are things happening in my world that I have no control over. My perceptions, my perspectives are shifting. I don't understand what it means. Can you help me understand this? And that's basically what I do. I help them to compute, to understand the new information that their systems are receiving, right? Because now something has triggered this awakeness, this awareness in them to realize the reality around them, and how asleep or how on autopilot they've been, just operating heads down, nose to the grindstone, just surviving. Right? There's more to life than that.
Been there for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
But that's what Reiki is. It helps through that awakening process to bring that energy up from the root, from the base, where we're grounded into this earthly realm, to merge the spiritual with the physical, right? That's ultimately what's happening. We're raising our consciousness to reach towards heaven, even though we act like we're reaching up above us, but it's all already right here. And then we're merging it here, and then we're sharing it with the earth around us, right? It's all within us already. It's not outside of us. And that's what Reiki helps to activate within us, is that remembrance. But what we call Reiki, what I'm getting back to, is it's been around forever. It's what Jesus used.
That's exactly what I was
You
going
know
to
what I
ask
mean?
you. Yeah.
And I'm not calling myself Jesus, but ultimately what we're getting back to is Christ consciousness.
And we can all do that, though, right?
Exactly.
We're all capable.
Exactly. And that's what I want to get to, because it's like, I feel like a big part of healing our spiritual ego through the process of spiritual awakening. We experienced some spiritual, maybe, I'll speak for myself. I experienced a bit of spiritual ego, what might be like spiritually narcissistic tendencies, to where I was like, I am Jesus. Oh my gosh, am I Jesus? Like, I can do the same things Jesus can do. And then it was like, I put all of this pressure on myself to save the world, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to help change the world. And it's like, over and over again, it was like, you are Jesus. And I was like, but that doesn't feel right. That just doesn't feel right. And I was like, Christ consciousness. I am connecting to Christ consciousness. Jesus, the story of Yeshua, Jesus, whatever, to me, it's Yeshua. We all have access. He was always telling us, the Buddha, anybody else, to me, it's all the same archetype. Right. They were always telling us the same story of what I can do, you can do.
Right.
What I can do, you can even do better if you choose, if you keep at it, right? And that's the whole point of it. We can all access Christ consciousness. Not only access it, but we are the embodiment of it, right? So we are it.
We're
all
little
of
fractions of God, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Of the God
the
molecule,
source.
so to speak. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what in your mind, what is God? What is the divine? What is it?
To me, it's a source energy. We apply a personality to it, and that's a very human understanding of it. We think of it as this father figure, but that's symbolic. It's Mother Earth, Father Sky. And we speak to heaven as though it's up there.
We just can't help that tendency, huh?
No, I mean it's because of the realm that we exist in. It's the realm of polarity.
Right.
So it's the masculine,
Duality.
the feminine, duality, the yin and the yang. It's what we're here to experience is polar opposites. So it makes sense that we engage that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But ultimately, that's something that we will evolve out of, that understanding, and just recognize that God is everything. God is the life force behind the trees, the life force behind that light, the life force behind you, behind me, behind Iggy. It's life force energy. It's the breath, right? That's why when I teach people to connect with the breath, that's the breath of God. We couldn't exist without that breath, right? But we couldn't have the breath without the trees. It's the symbiotic relationship between the human and nature. We are nature.
Right.
We don't come to the earth. We come out of the earth. Alan Watts speaks to that. How we come out of the ocean, like a wave comes out of the ocean. Right. Same concept. It's you plant a seed and it grows. It's all shown to us in so many different symbols and so many different analogies and so many different metaphors.
Even through the duality, the oneness is maybe not necessarily obvious, but it's there.
God
it's
is
visible.
The one. It's the source. It's what
oneness.
we return to, the same as a wave returns to the ocean.
And we see evidence of that in like we were talking about. You said if you look at somebody's ashes in a microscope.
Yeah, how it reflects the cosmos. Yeah. I saw a video. Someone sent it to me from TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but someone sent it to me. And it was this lady had her son's ashes put under a microscope, and it literally mirrored the cosmos. Like his ashes under the microscope were so vibrant and so colorful. And it looked like, the multiverse.
That just gives me chills to think about, man.
But that's what they tell us. We're
it's so
stardust,
amazing.
like we
exactly.
are it. And we have
Exactly.
such a hard time believing it because we've been so conditioned to believe that power exists outside of ourselves, that we have to lean on our government, that we have to lean on this society, this system, this culture in order to exist as human beings, as valid human beings. We have to do what everyone else says instead of just thinking for ourselves and deciding what resonates on an individual level and then how that impacts the whole, right? Because we are all creating this together.
Yeah.
Whether we want to acknowledge that or not, like we are creating this reality together. And that's what we come back to full circle. The more we operate in fear, the more we're going to have to be afraid of. The more we operate in love, the more we're going to have to love.
Right.
So that's ultimately what is happening here is that shift from the embodiment of fear to the embodiment of love. And that's going to require a dismantling and a deconstructing of fear within our system. And that's going to require a reconditioning of what it is that we're afraid of and why,
I felt that personally, and whenever I lived, everything was so negative in my life. I had was vibrating that negative frequency. I was attracting negative things into my life. And as soon as I switched off that frequency and I started focusing on positive things, and positive things started happening. So.
Right. And that doesn't mean that you didn't bypass negative experiences in your life. It's not just like, my foot's not on fire.
Right.
Right. Like you're going to acknowledge when hard things are happening, but okay, what can I do with this? And how can I transmute? How can I shift this into something that's usable?
Right.
And that's not, we have to be mindful because in spirituality, we can, they speak to positive, and I'm not digging again on you, but we have to be mindful of not spiritual bypassing. And I'm not saying that you are, but again, to anyone listening, we still need those denser experiences in order, how can you appreciate life without death? How can you fully understand love without understanding hate? How can you, understand joy without we have to have the contrast in order to appreciate the opposite side of that pole, that polarity.
Absolutely.
Otherwise we wouldn't recognize it, right? We wouldn't recognize it.
Yeah. So yes, we still want to fully experience the depth of everything,
Absolutely.
Like, yes, I'm afraid, or yes, I'm angry, or yes, I am sad. Those aren't necessarily negative emotions. Those are something that are teaching you. They're teaching you something very valuable and something useful in that moment.
Yeah.
Cool. Now what am I going to do with this information?
Right.
How am I going to apply this to my life?
Yeah.
And then how, that's where we're using wisdom as an action, right? We're not just understanding it. We're showing that we understand it. We're applying that knowledge and turning it into action, right? We're going to live by this. I call it my hot stove method. Like, I'm not going to keep touching the hot stove because I understand that burned me before. I'm going to find another way to warm my hands,
That makes sense. Yeah.
But sometimes we do get burned, right? And that's a reality of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we got to tend to those wounds, and then they just become really cool scars.
Yeah, learning lessons, right?
Yes.
And reminders. I can't help but go back, and I apologize, to go back to simulation and how I've been really thinking a lot about this lately, and how it does really, to me, it's becoming more and more apparent that it is a simulation. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. The first one that I think about is how, let's say, Aaron and I could be standing at opposing places in the same room, and we're perceiving that room differently, even though it's the same room. So to me, that's obviously a simulation. And we're sharing in the same experience in the same room, but we're seeing things completely differently. And then another thing that I think about, that things are a simulation, and people can, of course, chalk this up to just the earth rotating on its own axis and atmosphere passing by us. A man never steps into the same river twice. I never see a cluster of clouds that look exactly the same if I look away from them for even a split second. And it makes me think of the Truman Show. It is a simulation, and it is what we choose to do with what's presented to us. And of course, no matter though we are all sharing in the same existence, we are all experiencing things differently, and things come about in our lives that challenge us or make us question things, or things that we find, a joy and happiness in can be completely different than the next person. So how is that not a simulation? An individual experience in that simulation, even though we share in it all.
consider that light, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would we be able to see that light in total darkness?
If the light was on, there wouldn't be total darkness,
Bingo.
right?
Yeah.
So
this is all a projection. This
Right.
is all a hologram.
Right.
This is a holographic nature, right? This is a projection of light into the darkness.
Right.
Right. And that light is information.
Right.
And whatever we are informed of, whatever we are observing, that is what creates reality. This is what's real to me right now because this is what I'm observing.
Right, what you're perceiving. Mm-hmm.
But as soon as that shifts, it becomes something else entirely.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So my reality has shifted immensely over the past, let's say, 11 years, right? Over my whole lifetime.
Sure.
Hasn't yours?
Of course.
To where it feels like we're in our own little movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. We are in our own little movie.
Exactly.
You know, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Again, I can't say this is fact, right?
Right.
This is my perception of things. This is your perception of things. There
Of
are enough
course.
of us that are experiencing a very similar perception
For sure.
to where that becomes our reality because that's how we're observing it, right? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting to think about that, you know, the simulation. And of course, I think of the movie The Matrix and, you know, how.
That's a document. Like that's, to me, that
Exactly. And so many people share in that sentiment that it is we've talked about this too, right, Aaron?
It's just, it's given to us in ways that humans can digest.
Exactly.
It's an action film.
And you said
right?
Avatar. Avatar is exactly the same thing. Star Wars. Yeah.
All of those are trying to teach
Simulations.
us. There's so much symbolism in all of that.
And we've gotten so good, obviously, at resimulating.
Re-simulating. Right? There's the re again.
We've gotten so
Yeah.
good at it.
Yeah,
I mean,
recreating.
from Star Wars to Avatar. Think about the immense amount of change in terms of resimulating.
Right.
Or resimulation between the span of those two creations.
And doesn't that take us back full circle to the conversation where you said nothing new is happening?
Right. For
Right.
sure.
And so if energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be recreated or transformed into something else.
Right. Right.
Wouldn't that mean technically that we are the same beings spoken of in the Bible?
Totally.
Just having new experiences and in these new forms?
Totally. The only thing that seems to be constantly changing is our perception,
Bingo.
right?
Yeah.
Our perception of those things.
Exactly. Yep.
Makes
Our
complete sense.
understanding.
Our understanding.
perception shifts based on our understanding, and we're more consciously aware because we're more evolved.
Yeah.
So we can see more. We've climbed more of that mountain to where we're able to see from a broader perspective, a broader horizon, the broader horizon, right? We're expanding our horizons. We're not boxed in.
Right.
We're taking ourselves out of the box.
Right. So I've got a two-part question, and I'm just curious, and it's totally off of our list, but I just feel like it's a good question to ask since we're on the subject. With all that's occurring in the world today, and I know that you're avoiding social media right now and all that, and I want to so desperately as well to disconnect, but with all of the political things occurring, all of the global things that are occurring in terms of like wars and a lot of the suffering that's happening throughout the world that we can visibly see. I most certainly feel like the opposing side of that is this conscious awareness that I've come to see and to perceive, and I'm seeing it all around me. Are you seeing a balance in those two polarities in terms of having hope for the future of humanity? And I guess what I mean by that is are we beginning to see a strong shift in lessening the suffering that humanity is experiencing, and that we're finding ourselves having more joy, having more peace, having more acceptance towards others in this time of our human history?
If we consider that what is happening in the world around us is a reflection of our consciousness, it's a mirror of our consciousness, then it would only make sense that, of course, as our consciousness rises, as we heal as a species, as we heal as a group consciousness, as you spoke to before, then, of course, we are going to begin to reflect different things, right? So, as we said, as above, so below, as within, so without. If we are reflections of the whole, and if we are the creators now of our reality, the created become the creators. If we're trapped, as Aaron spoke to before, in a lower, and lower doesn't necessarily mean bad, okay? It's just different. In a lower frequency of fear, we're going to create a fear-based reality. If we're embodying, if we're shifting more to an energy of love, if we're rising out of fear, if we're rising out of survival mode, which is the point of healing in general, right, is to get into the energy of thriving eventually, then naturally, yes, we will experience more joy. We will experience more love. We will experience more things to be hopeful for because we're the ones creating things to be hopeful for. Right now, we're the ones creating things to be afraid of.
Totally.
Other humans are creating more. Other humans are creating separation. Other humans are creating division. And we are allowing that to happen the more we just stand by and watch it without doing something about it, without changing our perception of it, without engaging with it differently, without, again, transmuting it into something useful and wise.
Yeah.
The more that we each consciously choose to do that, then yes, we absolutely have hope for the future. And I am seeing that personally, just within my own work, within having more of these conversations, the simple fact that we're able to have these conversations, whereas before this would have been so taboo.
Totally.
This is what they talk to about esoterics, hidden knowledge. This would have been hidden knowledge, and now we can speak freely about it. So of course we're shifting.
And I do see a lot more people speaking about this, and the awareness of consciousness and expansion.
And you asked when we were on break if this became trending, how I would feel about that.
Yeah.
Because I spoke in a way that kind of poo-pooed on trending materials before, but this is where we have to consider that it's how we engage with the trends, right?
Sure.
So
it's not the trend itself, right?
No.
Right.
No.
You made
because
that
that's
clear.
just a pattern. That's again another
Right.
part of patterning and programming and conditioning ourselves.
Right.
That's how we're wired. That's how we're made, same as computer systems are, but we're in this human form. So we are programmable beings.
Right.
But we can program love. And that's one thing that like AI can't experience. They don't have a soul, and that's the spark of life that we have, right? That's the ether. That's the electric, so to speak. That's the source connection.
Totally.
And that's the difference. But if we're not careful, we're going to become, if we aren't mindful of the direction that we go with this, like technology can benefit us in a lot of ways, but it can also be our downfall. One of Greg Braden's quotes that I really appreciate is he said that we are more powerful than the machines that we've created, because those machines are reflections of us.
Of course.
They're machines of what we're already capable of, and here we're externalizing them,
Totally.
right? As within, so without. So what else can we externalize? What else can we take from here and put out there? But also, why aren't we just also using what this is capable of instead of going to an outside source?
Right.
Do you see how we're constantly repeating that pattern of outsourcing instead of just allowing it to be coming from right here? Like, we are supercomputers.
Right.
We are superhuman. We are supernatural. We are more than we've been told. We are more than we've been allowed to believe that we are, because a belief is a thought we just choose to continue thinking, right? Our beliefs don't really matter much. I can believe that I'm going to walk off a cliff and not fall, but gravity, the natural laws, right?
Natural
they don't
laws.
give a fuck,
That's right.
So they
don't care about you and your feelings and
our
what you
beliefs
believe.
only take us so far,
Right.
right? So it's something else entirely that we have to connect with.
I feel like that's kind of the where a lot of these challenges occur, because we do have to deal with not only natural laws, but the fact that we live in this physical reality.
And do you see how much responsibility that puts on us, and how much easier it would be to put that on God, or to put that on Jesus, or to put that on any other savior concept or archetype, instead of just taking self-responsibility and understanding that it's up to us how we engage in what we do with the world around us.
That's daunting.
And that's why a lot of people avoid it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that, again, I understand why it's avoided, but that's why we're limited, because we're constantly, you said I'm avoiding social media. I am, but avoidance is a tricky word. We're avoiding ourselves.
Right.
I'm avoiding an energy there. I'll go back on there eventually,
Sure,
but I need a
sure.
break from it, because it became another addiction to where I was mindlessly engaging with it. I was mindlessly consuming. I don't like to do things mindlessly.
It's so easy to do, and I apologize if I used the word avoiding. Maybe that's
You
not
use
the
whatever
word.
you want. Because it's accurate.
Maybe it wasn't.
I am avoiding.
It's such a I waste.
I'm avoiding being programmed in that way.
I don't know about you, Aaron, but I waste so much time.
Exactly.
So much
social
time, and
media.
you absorb that energy on there too, because there's
Totally.
so much
It's
negativity.
so much. You open up your
And
energetic
even though-
doorway.
Totally. And even
Yeah.
though my algorithm is filled with these gurus and these people that are speaking spiritually, and there's so much on there that truly inspires me, but then I'm just sitting with it. I'm not, I try to tell myself, or I tell myself, I'm not trying, I tell myself, like, take this motivation and go do something with it. Now, can't say I'm not doing that because we've finally made this podcast real, but we're having great conversations with people and each other, right, Aaron? But at the same time, like I don't, at times I feel like it's controlling my life, because I feel like my business needs to rely on it. And these kids that I'm helping, in terms of, tattooing, are using it as a tool to help them build their businesses, which of course is all I want. I don't want to use it myself really when I'm looking at it, but yet it pulls me in, and I'm sitting there just scrolling. And I know I'm not the only one. So many people do so. And it's hard to break.
In all those ways, it does serve. Right? Like
it does.
You are helping to teach others that want to learn things that you have mastered,
sure,
so to speak, right?
Sure.
So it's just a matter of, again, how we're engaging with it and why.
Being conscious and aware of how I'm utilizing that tool.
Yeah, because it is a beautiful way to connect with others, but it just, let's not allow it to be the only way we connect.
Well, it's also a beautiful way to disconnect, because I'm sitting in my living room and I've got the cat on my lap and I've got the Roku on and I'm just like blah, blah, blah.
How many times do you have the TV on, music playing, and then you're we're constantly overstimulated.
Exactly.
But do you see, and this is where I don't want to go like conspiracy theory or anything like that, but
no, we welcome that on this podcast.
We're constantly distracted. And so if we're constantly distracted, then we can't make changes.
Exactly.
We're not going to make changes when we're constantly distracted. We're not going to, we're going to stay trapped in that survival mode. We're going to stay trapped in distraction, and then nothing changes,
right.
Or actually the world changes around us and we don't stay caught up. And that's where people are trapped in their cognitive dissonance because they weren't paying attention. They were too distracted.
Right.
Right.
I feel like it's a mass hypnosis, really. I mean,
it absolutely is. It puts us into autopilot, and that's very intentional. And that's music, media, all of it. They use different notes, they use different frequencies to drop you into a certain level, right? Like when I was younger, I listened to angry music because I was an angry adolescent, because I'd been through a lot of shit and I didn't know how to process it. So
right.
I was in the mosh pits. I was taking on full-grown men. I was angry, and I didn't have a healthy outlet for that. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And that's why it's like now I could never imagine engaging that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt another person.
Right.
I don't feel the need to cause physical harm to someone. Unless I'm absolutely have to defend myself. That's
right.
entirely different. But it's just, it teaches us, it drops us into certain frequencies, and then we can stay stuck there if we're not careful. That's what I'll say,
I mean, it makes complete and utter sense, how easily we can be distracted, and then how that keeps us from changing. But then on the opposite side of that, once you become aware and awake and you do want to make some changes, and then the weight of the world kind of drops on you and you feel like that's so daunting, what I really appreciate, Keeley, about our conversations and things that you share with me is that I don't have to carry that weight. And what I focus on, or what you help me to think about focusing on, is that the changes that I can make are just solely within me. And that's it. And with that vibration, that frequency goes outward, and then it affects not just the reality around me, but the people around me as well.
Exactly.
And that's what's amazing about the process of becoming aware and awake, and then not allowing, not letting the weight of the world sit on your shoulders and thinking, oh my God, like how you were saying, like, I must change the world. Now that I can see, I must change the world. No, I just need to change me. Just work on changing me and making me better.
Right. Ram Dass says it. He's the best thing I can do for you is work on me. The best thing that you can do for me is work on you.
Exactly.
That's what we can do is we don't. And that's my goal, is to help each person through that process.
Right.
I'm not saying you have to do it my way. You have to do it and be just like me. How do you want to do it like you?
Right.
How can you be your most authentic self, and then how can you express that into the world in a healthy and loving way?
Yeah, right? You show us like what does that look like for you?
Right.
Not for them, not for the world,
not
for
what we've been conditioned to think that we are, what it is, but to really come to an understanding of what that means on a very personal level. And that to me is that's where we're self-actualizing. That's where we're embodying our understandings, and we're implementing and applying our understandings and our knowledge to our day-to-day lives.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, I think this is a good time to shift to the breakdown.
The breakdown.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a segment on our podcast called The Breakdown.
Yeah.
And what we do is we either ask our guests or we bring about a quote that we feel really resonates with us, and we just kind of discuss what it means to us. So I know we talked about this prior to recording today. So I was just curious what quote that is that you chose to share with us today.
The one that I chose to share today is one by Alan Watts, because it's something that I remind myself of whenever I start to lose sight. And it is, he said, there is nothing more reprehensible than the person that is trying to be the saint. And I feel that in life, we're often taught that, because we believe that we're sinners, because we believe that we are imperfect beings, because of basically what we've been indoctrinated and conditioned with. We feel like we're always trying to be better. And the more that we try, then it just becomes sort of performative and perfunctory, and we're not fully embodying it. We're just performing a role. Like, here I am, look at me, I'm being a good person. And I feel like I got kind of caught up with that in my work. And it started to feel very, I felt a lot of friction. I felt a lot of discomfort and dis-ease within my being because of how I was engaging with it. It was almost like I was trying to make up for something. I was trying to make up for I couldn't save Patrick, or I couldn't do this, or I did that wrong, or whatever it might be. And I was like, I have to be a better person. I have to try and be a better person. I have to be, you think of a woman back in the day, and they would say she was a saint because she put up with her husband's shit, right? And ultimately what those people were doing was just kind of bypassing. They were putting up with everything and not really self-advocating. Right? The more that we try to be saintly, the more that we try to be good, the more that we try to be nice, we tend to bypass who we actually are and how we actually feel. You know what I mean? Like, totally. I don't have to be this perfect person. I don't have to be the saint. I don't have to be good and nice all the time. Like, I'm allowed to get angry sometimes. I'm allowed to get sad sometimes. I'm allowed to be like, you know what? No, fuck you. That was a shitty thing to say, or that was a shitty thing to do, or, but let's talk about it. Let's heal it from here. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, we get confused as to what it means to be good, what it means to be saintly. We're another one that where every saint has a past, every sinner has a future, because we become this way through natural experience, not because we force ourselves into it, because then we're not actually embodying it. We're just performing a role, right? We become this way through experience, to where it's like, oh, my conscience is telling me that this doesn't feel right. Oh, okay, that's how I become a better person. I start listening to my conscience. I'm not just going to perform like, look at me, I'm nice all the time, even though this person just really pissed me off.
Right.
Right? Like, we've got to acknowledge how we're really feeling. We've got to acknowledge why we're feeling that way. Okay, well, why did it piss you off? And that's where it comes back to, again, spiritual bypassing. It's like, am I truly feeling positively about this, or am I forcing myself into a positive perspective? Like, do I really feel that way about it? Because then we're not really embodying it. We're not really integrating it. We're just performing it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So there's nothing more reprehensible than the person trying to be the saint, because then it just feels like, a lot of spirituality has become performative. This is what I'm told to do. This is how I have to do it. This is what it means to be a good person.
Right.
Based on what everyone else tells us it means to be a good person.
Exactly. There's no difference between that and what the Matrix is telling us to do.
Exactly. Then we're just again falling in line, Yeah. Like, we're not going to be nice all the time. We're going to be the saint and the sinner. But really, if you look back at it, like, I asked my friend one time that's well versed in the Bible, I said, what does sin even mean? He's like, to miss the mark. We're all going to miss the mark sometimes.
Make a mistake.
We're all going to make a mistake. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they'll call that sin, original sin, but ultimately all that it is being human. And that's what we're here for, is to understand what it means to be human and how to do that in the most natural ways, not artificial ways, right? Which is what the world is becoming, is very artificial, very superficial, but something that involves more depth and more authenticity. Right. And if we're always trying to be good, we're not being authentic, and then we're just another part of the artificial, superficial world around us.
I think what's beautiful about what you just said is I keep going back to the word trying. Mm-hmm. And you said about how we're not fully embodying whatever it is that we are trying to be. And back to a Yoda statement, it's either you are or you aren't, right? Either you're embodying that person or that thing you're trying to be, or you're not.
Right.
And I feel like that really resonates with me in terms of the quote that you shared. Like just trying, you're not there. You're not there. You're just trying to attempt to be there.
Right.
Instead of just being.
That brings a level of acceptance, though, because it brings me back to our conversation about like boxing, right? Like I was trying to be a boxer, but what I had to accept was that okay, cool. I am a boxer, but I'm very amateur.
Sure.
Right? It's just how we engage with it. It's the language that we use. It's to me, it's the intention behind it.
Right.
You know, like why am I trying to do this?
Right.
You know, and this is where people are like, man, this is too much. You know, like I don't want to think about things that hard.
Right.
I just want to do it. A lot of people choose to be on autopilot. They want to. That's why they love cars that drive for them now, right? Like I don't want to have to drive my car anywhere. Or the song "Jesus Take the Wheel."
Yeah.
It's like no, you gotta be in charge of your own life. You've got to decide where you're going, and that's where we've got to be mindful of. Like, yeah, we can go with the flow to an extent, but if we're not careful, we'll flow right off a cliff.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
The waterfall is gonna take us. You know, and that's where we can't just have blind faith, and that's something that I've had to evolve out of. I'm like, oh, just put your faith in it. What am I putting my faith in? You know. Do you have faith?
I think I do. I think I do have faith.
What do you put faith in?
I put faith in my beliefs. I do put faith in other people. And I do put faith in this life that I'm living. I do put faith in the source I feel I'm connecting to.
What helps you to put faith in another person? Consistent action.
Consistent action.
If I just tell you to have faith in me, but I don't give you good reason to have faith in me, are you going to hold faith in me?
Of course not. Obviously not.
So wouldn't the same be said for source energy?
Sure.
Have we been given reason to have faith in source energy? Can we look at the intelligence of our design and the intelligence, how the birds, if we didn't have birds, the rest of the world wouldn't wake up. There's so much intelligence in that design. The way our bodies know how to breathe, the way that we learn to walk, the way that we, how we are constantly learning. There's such divine intelligence in that.
Man, that is so incredible what you're sharing right now. Seriously, it's dawning on me what you're saying. Like, and it's so subtle though. Life shows us faith. It's so subtle, like the birds singing in the morning. Breathing is a huge one.
Yeah.
But we're given so many reasons to have faith, but it's a matter of, choosing why we're putting faith in these things. Yeah. And that's what I mean. I put faith in a higher intelligence because I see it at play in my life. Right. But I'm not waiting.
You have concrete evidence, is what you're saying.
I'm not waiting on that higher intelligence to come and save me.
Right.
I'm understanding that it's going to be a co-creative partnership with the universe and with that source.
But with that, you're saying you have concrete evidence. You see the evidence in front of you.
Well, because I've engaged with it intentionally. Sure. It's a co-creative partnership, right? Like we have to be it's a participatory thing.
Yeah.
We can't just sit back and be like, the universe is going to drop everything into my lap that I think about, because what I think about manifests. And no, we still have to create it to an extent, right?
Right.
But I understand that I've actually been given within my being everything that I need to create what I need to create, technically.
Right.
So I have faith that I can create my dreams. I can turn them into a reality. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to imagine them, because we're all rooted in imagination. And that's what a lot of us have lost, is our sense of imagination. Therefore, we don't dream anymore. We don't create from a sense of hope. We create from a sense of fear. I have to create this in order to survive. I have to create this in order to have a roof over my head, in order to have clothes on my body. It's not out of joy. It's out of survival.
Right.
So there's a lot to it. We could talk about this forever.
What do you think, Aaron? What do you think of the quote?
It's a deep one, man. I mean, can you say the quote again one more time?
There is nothing more reprehensible than the person trying to be the saint.
Mm-hmm. I think it just goes back to be yourself, be true to yourself. You said, you can't like if something pisses me off, it's going to piss me off, and I'm going to tell that person in love. I'm going to act out of love, And I'm not going to be fake about it, you know.
Right.
Like you can't be a saint all the time.
You're going to self-abandon if you don't self-advocate.
Yeah,
right?
be true to thy own self. Be true, isn't that
Right. Like I don't want to
That's
say
right.
anything because it might upset them or it might hurt them.
Right.
I'm just going to keep it cool and calm and not cause any friction.
Right.
That's us trying to be good and trying to keep everyone else comfortable. So that's ultimately people pleasing, and it's a performative action, and it's actually rooted in fear.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Iggy?
I mean, it's exactly what I just shared. I mean, I was saying the word trying. I kept going back to the word trying. I feel like a lot of our purest forms of expression are just it's like it's instantaneous. It's not something we have to try to be. So that's what I kind of get. That's something that I'm getting out of what the quote is, what you're saying. It's
Exactly.
I know for me,
And it's force.
I feel very instinctive often in all kinds of situations. And now I'm not saying that those instincts are always appropriate or that I can't sort of talk myself off a ledge. I'll give you an example. If I'm driving down the highway and someone cuts me off, of course, instinctively, I'm going to freak out and be mad because I'm in this survival situation. But now I find myself saying, if nothing occurs, I'm like, everybody's fine. I'm fine. That person's fine. And who knows what that person is going through that caused them to cut me off. Who knows? Maybe they have a child who's been injured on the playground and they're rushing to the hospital to get to them. Maybe they're in some kind of emotional distress. I don't know, obviously. So why overly judge the situation based on that initial instinctual reaction or response? Instead, I soften it, and it's serving me. It's allowing me to let go of that situation in such a way, because nothing occurred, that is allowing me more peace within myself, instead of like, damn it, son of a bitch, motherfucker, I'm gonna chase this guy down. I'm gonna give him the finger, which a lot a people do.
I used to do that.
You become consumed by that initial reaction or response.
Yeah.
But like I said, I take it back. I'm being someone who's not trying to be anyone other than who I am, good and bad.
What's good or bad?
What
if it's just human?
Right, just being human.
But that's it, though. How do we discern right from wrong? And we have to do that on a very personal level. Like,
Totally.
Of course, murder feels wrong,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Cheating, stealing.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of things we can share as a community as to what we might think is right or wrong.
And that's why ideally we heal ourselves enough to get to a point where we don't feel such rage that we
Right.
could cause such harm to another human being.
Exactly.
Your example was beautiful, because I used to do that. And then what stopped me the last time was my daughter going, "Mom, why are you doing this?" Because someone cut me off, and I was pissed off because that put my kid in harm's way. So guess what I did?
Sure.
I revved my engine and I chased after him, and I wanted him to know I was pissed off, right? But then I put my own kid in harm's way because she was in the passenger seat.
Exactly.
So my anger got the better of me, instead of just being like, okay, that's how he wants to engage with life. Doesn't mean that's how I have to engage with life.
Right.
Doesn't mean I need to follow suit and mimic that behavior.
Exactly.
Right.
We're
It's
perpetuating that
choosing,
reality.
I'm going to call, and now it doesn't even bother me anymore. I'm just like, well,
Right.
okay.
As long as nobody got
Carry
hurt.
on.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that happened. And I just move on about my day, because I don't take it personally anymore. That's where when we take things so personally, it creates such a response within our system. When that guy wasn't thinking about me when he did it.
Right.
It wasn't personal.
Exactly.
And maybe that's part of the problem, is we're not considering each other enough. But ultimately, more often than not, people's behaviors are so subconscious. They're so on autopilot. They don't even realize what they're doing.
Totally.
And that's why it's so much more peaceful not to take shit personally anymore.
I completely agree. And Aaron, I'm just going to kind of shoot it back towards you, only because I have a sneaking suspicion that this particular example of this resonates with you in terms of letting your anger get the best of you.
Yeah, I've got some bad road rage. Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of that all the time. Somebody will cut me off, and my first thing is, motherfucker. Like,
Yeah.
I get some really evil thoughts in my head. Like, man, I just want to ram this piece of shit off the road.
Right.
But
What's that rooted in? Because they made you feel what?
fear. Yeah.
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 Yeah. more often than not, our anger is rooted in fear.
Yeah.
Totally.
Or pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fear for your life at
Fear
that
for your
moment.
life. Yeah.
Fear for your family, maybe.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
isn't fear interesting? Because it's like in those moments, we have a reason to be afraid.
Totally.
And yet I can be sitting in my living room and watching the news and feel absolute and utter fear, even though I
Totally.
have no control over what I'm
Right.
watching. In that moment, it's not happening to me. I'm just watching what someone else is telling me, and I'm still filled with absolute fear, right? Because all that the news is showing us lately is things to be afraid of.
That's all they show
It's
us.
designed that way, I think.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of choosing, do I need to be afraid right now?
Absolutely.
And even in that moment, right after it happens, as Iggy said, oh, wait, I'm okay. Nothing happened.
It's
I don't,
not
I don't
allowing-
have to be afraid right now. I don't actually have to be angry right now either.
Right.
I think a lot of it's the ego too. You know,
Of course.
this motherfucker. You know, what right does he have to cut me off? You know what
Right.
I mean? Yeah.
Right.
But then we mature the ego.
Yeah.
Right? And the ego understands it's not really personal. Dude's just in his own little world.
Right.
Operating on autopilot and getting from A to B as quickly as he can because he's clearly in survival mode and he's got his nose to the grindstone and he's in a hurry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Totally. Wow. Well, I think we're at the a good stopping point here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. This has been incredible. I've learned
Yes.
a ton today.
Yes, Keeley. I knew that this would not disappoint, and I'm sure that our listeners will feel the same way. And we're just really excited to obviously publish the episode and just this is what we want. We purposefully made this episode to have these kinds of conversations, and we're definitely going to have you back on for
I'd
sure.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, for
You
sure.
guys made it so easy. And so
Yeah. And you know, it's funny. Like I said, it's only our third attempt at it. So, and our first attempt at actually interviewing someone, which changes the dynamic.
And
But,
see, it's so natural. That's how you know.
yeah,
Right?
for sure. Oh,
Yeah.
we as soon as we finished our first podcast, we were like, yeah, this is,
Yeah,
we're
this
going to
is
keep
fun.
doing this shit.
Yeah.
It sits
so much fun.
Let
Yeah.
yourself be led
Exactly.
by that feeling. Right?
Exactly.
It
We're
resonates.
super excited.
Yeah.
But thank you again, Keeley,
Absolutely.
for,
Yes,
for
thank
being
you
with
so
us.
Thanks for letting me share.
Of course. Let's do it again. And
love
thank
that.
you. Thank everyone out there for listening and you know, and sharing.
Open minds and hearts are appreciated.
That's
of
it.
course. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Till next time.
Thank
Till
you,
next
guys.
time.
Till
All
next
right.
time.